from the heart of Europe. To the tip of Africa. From the centers of Asia. To Central and South America. You're a part of the world's largest prayer and praise gathering.
Our final guest on this unique program tonight, and I hope that you stay tuned for the next few minutes because I am holding a book. This is a heavy night. I'm holding a book written by Jeanette Reynolds, and I'll tell you about her in just a moment. And the book is called Where Were You on 9/11? And I mentioned a minute ago, like the Kennedy assassination and the astronaut space shuttle thing, everybody knows where they were on 9/11. I was in a rent car in St. Louis trying to drive to a telethon on Christian TV, and I had to turn around, and those were the times when you couldn't get a plane. Remember how strange it was? There wasn't one airplane in the air for days. So I had to drive a rent car from St. Louis back to Dallas. Everybody remembers where they were on 9/11. Well, Jeanette Reynolds, who is an author, a speaker, and considered a pundit on the lasting effects of 9/11, wrote this book that is really comprised of intimate interviews with people involved in various ways with 9/11. I'd like for you to welcome Jeanette Reynolds, the author of this book, tonight. Thank you, Jeanette.
Pleasure to meet you, Pastor.
Welcome. Have a seat.
Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to hearing some things about the book, but one of the unique things that I learned about you tonight is that you wrote this book, and I was reading in the book and on the back of the book, because you surprised me a little bit when you told me in the green room you were from Montana.
Oh, yes.
You know, you don't meet anybody to interview on TV from Montana, for goodness sake, but a great place to be from.
Yes, thank you. And it has so much in common with Texas because it's a big state, right? And we have cattle and cowboys and all that good stuff. So I think we kind of have an affinity for one another already, don't we? I mean, Montana and Texas, we're kind of big.
It's just not as big.
That's right. That's right.
It's a wonderful place, by the way, and I want you to catch us up a little bit with before the book and what you're involved in. I know you have a magazine, and what prepared you for comprising this book and writing it?
You know, the intimate interview part about this that you brought up, which I'm glad you did. You know, our relationship with God is so intimate. He knows those little details about you and you and you that no one else knows, and that was part of the reason that I began to put this book project together. A week before those towers came down, I had just sold my magazine. I had an interview magazine for years and decided I wanted to take a break from that. And the towers came down, and then I was given, I believe, an assignment to do. And that's what I did. I started putting stories together.
But you said shortly before that you weren't a Christian.
Not at all.
So how did your conversion happen?
Well, it happened in the 12-month period that it took to put this book together. And I would have, as I sit here today, I would have never thought that could have happened. It really transformed my life. Now, I can say that with a smile on my face, though I know the subject matter of this is extremely grave and somber, but it transformed many people that day, as you know, in a lot of different ways. And so I do want to say, for those out there in the listening audience, the viewing audience, there's hope for you, even if you're an older person like me. God will call you and bring you, and it is amazing what He does. That's all I can say. You know, there's days I sit there and I think, amazing isn't even strong enough a word. It's like, it doesn't even cover it. It's like, there are no words at times. And I'm a word junkie. You know, I'm a writer. I sit at my computer all day long and type words. And there are sometimes I just sit there and say,
but amazing
wow,
isn't good enough.
it's so true.
Tell us about the book. You started putting it together, obviously, after 9/11. You started to realize as an author, a writer, What was it about 911 that caused you to want to assemble from interviews a book about the aftermath? What is the aftermath in your opinion?
It's a very good question. To borrow a few words from the late great Dr. Martin Luther King, you know, he said we live in a 10-day nation, and we really do. And that is at the end of 10 days after some traumatic event or some war or something that's a crisis of a global effort, we forget about it in 10 days. And I thought, you know, I want to carry this on. I want to hear people's stories myself personally, and I also want a memory of that day somehow that can touch everyday people. And there are everyday people and very famous people in this book. But that was another comparison I drew, because we're all the same. We just choose different careers, or we have different paths in our lives. I mean, Donald Trump is no different than, you know, the average person on the street. He just happened to choose to go into real estate and became successful. But, you know, I mean, that said, in all honesty.
But he has input in the book. What was Donald Trump's take?
Well, he is interesting because he came from a standpoint of being very strong, very, okay, let's just concentrate on the future, let's rebuild New York, let's get that skyline back up to where it should be. So a very sort of, in a way, honestly, very positive sort of, okay, let's get on, let's move on with it. And, you know, for some, that opinion may be something they can relate with, and for some it may not be.
Did he lose any family members in the towers, though?
Not that I know of, no. But he was standing, his visual account was quite interesting, because he was actually in his penthouse at the top of his building, and he saw everything just disappear before his eyes, just gone, you know. And you know that the devastation of that day was really
in your mind, your interview with him, did he intimate any other than let's rebuild the skyline? And I think that's wonderful, the positive approach. We're Americans, we can move on. But any spiritual introspection, any, my God, I've got to look at myself?
No. And thank you for asking that, because there are those people that, and I did want to, by the way, include those people that weren't necessarily spiritual bound. It's interesting how God assembled the people for this book. I did not. I do not take credit for it.
Tell me about an interview in here where somebody really was personally involved and or touched by it in a deep way, a profound way, changed.
There's a lot of them, but one in particular, Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York. She was actually saw her staff members perish on the TV monitors as she was leaving in an interview that morning, I think on ABC with one of Diane Sawyer or one of the shows. I may have the show wrong, but she saw the second plane hit the second tower, and her office. She was on her way to the office that morning, and barely escaped it. And she's a believer and a woman of strong faith, and I came to know her after this and to really have a great respect for her. Another person is Lieutenant Colonel Bo Greitz, who's a most decorated Green Beret commander in our military, and he's a strong believer and a wonderful man of God, and he really helped me understand the difference between these terrorists and how they think and how they don't value life. He trained Mujahideen Afghan freedom fighters, so he's been there in Saudi, he's been there in Afghanistan. He knows the scene over there very well, so it was a learning experience, but it certainly touched everyone's life in a deep way, whether they realize it or not, which is interesting.
What about you? After you finished the interviews and you kind of saw and learned, what did it do for you or to you?
When I started the book, as I said, I was ready to take a vacation. I sold my magazine. I was ready to take a break, go somewhere nice. I didn't want to hear anyone's stories anymore. I had an interview magazine, so I was, to be very honest, a little tired of hearing people's stories. And that does happen. And I decided to take a vacation. Well, a week before the sale completed, the towers came down, and through, again, looking back now, God orchestrated the whole thing. He had a special, through people, and God works through everyone, and that's the interesting aspect. He orchestrated a ticket for me to go to Washington, D.C. and New York 3 weeks after the towers came down. And I was there, I thought, to have a dinner at the White House, which I was invited to a dinner at the White House. They had changed venue at the last minute, obviously because of 9/11 and all of the security precaution, and then go on to New York and show some friends of mine around New York. Well, we ended up going to New York, and they wanted to go down to Ground Zero, and I didn't even know where it was at. I'd seen it on TV like everyone else. You know, I think I watched CNN that morning and watched that second plane hit the tower. And we went down to Ground Zero, and just standing there at that smoldering pit of, you know, fume and fire and smoke and twisted metal, the visual impact of that was so profound on me that I couldn't shake it. And you really could sense, I can put a word on it now, I couldn't then, Mike, but you could sense a darkness or an evil around that place. And you talk to people of faith and they understand that. You talk to the average person who has no faith and they're like, oh, what do you mean? You know, but it is there. And this book, the writing of it, compiling all the informations, it became, or all the interviews rather, it became spiritual warfare. And that was, again, another lesson for me that God had in the 12 months that it took to write it.
What do you want to see come out of this book for people?
It gave us a chance to realign or redefine our priorities, I think. It gave us also a chance to think about our faith. If we weren't coming to faith, and maybe it's time to come to, and I think that that's the best possible outcome that a book like this can have, is not forget what happened on 9/11 and just brush it off.
And so many have. I mean, really, I don't know whether it's because they want to, but so many have. How many of you remember the kind of mood of the country for several weeks? And there was no Supreme Court case about whether we could say God or not, and Republicans and Democrats were on the steps of the Capitol singing together. You know, it's amazing how soon we forget where a place that God was with us through, a horrible place. I appreciate you writing the book, Jeanette, and I appreciate hearing about your conversion. Really, through the experience and a part of the experience, that's really the most wonderful part of all.
It was a gift.
I'm glad for you.
Thank you.
And I know you have a path that's going to be exciting. God's going to use you. You're new to the kingdom, but God's going to use you in a tremendous way.
Thank you.
You've got a gift for a reason. So don't just stay off in Montana, but while you're there, do some wonderful things. And how can people get a copy of the book?
They can go to wherewereyou.911.net and order a copy, or Amazon, Barnes & Noble.
Amazon.com or wherewereyou.net. You can get a copy of the book. We'd love for you to have it. I appreciate Jeanette Reynolds, her input here, and a chance to remember, because America must not forget. Let's give a great big God bless you to Jeanette Reynolds. Thank you so much for being with us. God bless.